In the forgotten village of Lupoaia, tucked deep in the Carpathian Mountains, people still whispered of the child born under the blood moon. It was a savage storm that night. Lightning cracked through the clouds like God's own fury, and the rain came down in sheets that washed away even the freshest footprints. But in a crumbling cottage on the edge of the forest, a woman screamed her final breath into the night. Her name was Elisabetta Rusu, and she died giving birth to a son. The midwife, pale and trembling, said the baby had never cried. He had simply stared up at her wide-eyed, silent, with pupils like pinpricks of coal. The storm stopped the moment he arrived. The wind died, and the wolves, always howling in those hills, fell silent. It was unnatural. The villagers felt it in their bones. They named the boy Iancu, but the old women in Lupoaia didn't speak his name. They whispered a different one instead. Pricolici. Iancu grew, but not like other children. By the time he could walk, animals avoided him. Cats hissed. Dogs ran. Birds fell silent when he approached. His father, a quiet woodcutter, did his best to raise the boy. But there was something distant about the child, like he belonged more to the wind and soil than to any family. At 5 years old, Iancu was caught in the woods behind the church. He had a rabbit in his hands, broken-necked, bleeding. When asked what he was doing, he replied with a grin, "I wanted to see how long it takes for souls to leave." The priest called him cursed. The teacher refused to have him in class. And the village children learned early to stay away from him. But Iancu didn't care. He wandered the forests alone, sometimes for days, and every time he came back there was a new scar, or a new tooth sharper than the last. One boy, the baker's son, swore he saw Iancu in the trees, not walking, but crawling on all fours, his mouth full of black mud, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. But no one believed him. No one wanted to. By 16, Iancu was tall and broad-shouldered, but his strength came with something else, a quiet, simmering cruelty. He broke a goat's leg just to watch it scream. He set fire to the mayor's scarecrow, then blamed it on a ghost in the cornfield. And when the village elder tried to confront him, he was found 2 days later with scratches all over his back and his tongue bitten clean through. Still, the villagers said nothing. They feared him more than they feared sin. But it was what happened at age 17 that changed everything. Petru was Iancu's younger brother, bright-eyed, soft-spoken, loved by the entire village. The kind of child who fed stray dogs and fixed broken fences without being asked. He was everything Iancu was not. One cold morning, Petru's body was found in the barn. His chest had been torn open. His throat was gone. There was no blood on the floor, but long, ragged claw marks covered the walls. Iancu told his father it was wolves. But there were no tracks in the snow, no prints, no fur, no signs of struggle. Only a thin line of footprints leading away, barefoot ones, Iancu's. The village held its breath. They knew. Everyone knew. But no one dared speak it aloud. 2 years passed. Then late one night, the daughter of the village mayor, bruised, bleeding, stumbled out of the forest, screaming that Iancu had tried to drag her into the roots of a dead tree. She was saved by a farmhand, Mihail, who had seen the whole thing. He didn't wait for trial or talk. He followed Iancu to the woods with an axe and buried it deep in his back. Iancu died laughing. Face down in the dirt, blood in his teeth, eyes still open. The villagers buried him before sunrise. No priest, no ceremony, no cross. They just dug, dumped the body, and left. They thought the nightmare was over. They were wrong. That night, the sky turned black again. The wind howled like wolves long dead, and the trees groaned as if something was climbing through them. By dawn, the grave was empty. The coffin was splintered, torn apart from the inside. And in the soil, something moved. Iancu was no longer a man. He had become what the villagers had feared from the very beginning. A Pricolici. The first death was dismissed as coincidence. Old Mihai the shepherd was found face down in his pen. His throat had been torn open, his sheep scattered and crying. Some said wolves, despite there being no tracks, no signs of a struggle. His body was cold, stiff, and twisted in a way that made the strongest men look away. But what truly chilled the villagers wasn't how he died. It was his face. Eyes wide, mouth open in a scream he never got to finish, and a single word scratched into the dirt beneath his hand. Rusu. The villagers tried to carry on. They always did. In Lupoaia, superstition was part of survival. Garlic was hung on windows, crosses were carved into door frames, and no one went into the forest after dark. But fear isn't easily buried. especially not when the earth won't stay still. 3 nights after Mihai's death, the church bell rang just once at 2:11 a.m. The priest, Father Eli, lived alone in the chapel. He was a man of deep faith, a man who believed in scripture, not in shadows. But that night something made him leave his bed. He opened the chapel door. The villagers found him the next morning. Not torn apart, not devoured. No, something worse. He was kneeling in front of the altar, hands folded in prayer, his heart ripped out and placed on the Bible. There was no blood on the floor, just muddy footprints leading from the door to the altar and back out again. The heart still beat once when touched. Then silence. Whispers spread faster than the cold. People stopped sleeping. They spoke in hushed tones, as if louder words might summon something listening just beyond the trees. Some remembered what the old women used to say. When a man dies full of hate, when his soul can't rest, he comes back with fur on his skin and hunger in his chest. They said Pricolici were not just beasts. They were revenant spirits of the damned, given flesh through death and sin. And Iancu Rusu, he was born sinful. They should have burned his body. They should have pierced his chest with hawthorn and buried him face down. Instead, they let him rise. One man refused to believe it, Mihail, the farmhand who had struck the killing blow. Guilt ate at him, but he remained firm. I killed him. I buried him. That was a boy, not a demon. Until the night he heard scratching at his door. 3 slow drags, then silence. He opened the door with a lantern in one hand and a blade in the other. No one was there, but muddy footprints led from the steps into the cornfield, and hanging from the scarecrow's arms was a chunk of bloodied flesh. Still warm? Mihail ran back inside and locked the door. He didn't sleep. Not that night, not the next. On the 3rd night, the villagers woke to the sound of screaming. They found Mihail's body on his roof, arms outstretched, nailed like a crucifix. His eyes had been removed and replaced with river stones. A circle of wolf prints surrounded the house, though no dogs or wolves lived in the village anymore. It was after that 3rd death that they turned to Baba Mura. She was nearly 100 years old, bent like a question mark, her eyes clouded with cataracts. Most thought she had gone mad decades ago, rambling to spirits and muttering about roots and bones. But they needed answers, and the dead seemed to listen to her. She listened to their story, one gnarled hand resting on a carved walking stick. When they finished, she gave a slow, shaky nod. "It is the boy," she said, "Iancu Rusu. But he's not a boy anymore. He has returned not as a man, but as a hunger." They asked what they should do. Her response chilled the room. "You can't kill what's already dead, but you can bind it. You can burn the body, yes, but only if you find it. He will have hidden it. The Pricolici is clever. It doesn't need its corpse to walk. It only needs your fear. And once it's fed on enough blood, it won't need the corpse at all." That night, several villagers gathered with torches and garlic and made their way into the woods. They searched the burial site, dug up what they could. But the coffin was gone. Gone. There were drag marks leading into the forest, but no end to them. Just scratches on trees. Bones hung in branches. And carved deep into a rock near the river, 3 words, "I never left." Somewhere in the dark, beyond the tree line, a pair of yellow eyes opened. The Pricolici was just getting started. The village of Lupoaia held its breath as dusk fell. Doors were locked, candles lit. Garlic twisted around windows like thorny vines. No one dared speak his name anymore, not Iancu, not Pricolici, for fear the wind would carry it to ears that should not hear. But fear has a scent, and something in the woods was breathing it in. It began with the dogs. Only 3 remained in the village. Strays thin and twitchy who barked at leaves and shadows. That night, just after the church bell rang for evening prayer, the barking stopped. Not faded, stopped. As if their throats had been clamped shut all at once. When Mihnea, the tanner, peeked through his shutters, he saw one of them. Or what had been one. The body was slumped near the well, split open from neck to belly. But there were no tracks, no signs of a struggle. Only a long claw mark carved into the dirt in a perfect circle. By midnight, the village was silent. Then came the howling. Not the wild, hungry howling of wolves, no, this was worse. It was high and cracked and wet, like something had forgotten how to scream properly. It echoed from the forest, then from the rooftops, then from beneath the ground. People covered their ears. Children cried. Old men muttered prayers half forgotten. Then came the knocks. 3 at one door, then 2, then 7, rapid, urgent, like someone begging to be let in. "Please, A voice whispered outside the widow Petronella's door. "I'm cold, let me in." "I'm lost." She moved toward it, weeping, recognizing the voice of her dead husband. But her daughter grabbed her wrist. "Mama, look." And there, in the crack beneath the door, a single yellow eye, blinking, stared back. By morning, 7 homes had been broken into. 10 villagers were gone. No blood, no screams, just silence and the faint stench of damp earth and rot lingering in the air. Where their beds had been, only one thing remained. Tiny clumps of fur-black corpse still warm. The priest's Bible was found torn in half. On the last page, someone or something had drawn a symbol. A wolf's head split by a blade. Some wanted to run, flee to the city. But the roads out were blocked not by men, but by the forest itself. Trees had fallen. Roots erupted from the soil like hands, dragging wagons under. The path was gone. And that's when Baba Mura spoke again. "It's too late for flight," she said. "The Pricolici is not hunting anymore, it is nesting. It is building a home, made of memories and skin. And if you hear a loved one's voice in the dark, don't answer, don't open the door, or you will become part of its voice." That night, the village agreed they would search again for the body. The corpse had to be somewhere hidden, feeding the monster's return. But as the sun set, one final horror arrived. 3 of the missing villagers came back. Alive, smiling, eyes glassy and hollow. Their skin was pale, their voices flat. "I dreamed of the forest," one of them said. "It showed me what I was before I was born. I saw Iancu, he is beautiful now." Then they turned their heads in unison and howled. The day after the 3 hollow-eyed villagers returned, Lupoaia stopped pretending it was a village. No more markets, no more bells. No more prayers, just whispers and locked doors, and the sense that the village itself was sinking into the earth. The thing that haunted them, the Pricolici, was no longer stalking from the shadows. It was here, watching, whispering through familiar voices, and it was growing stronger. Baba Mura gathered the remaining villagers in the chapel cellar. Only 12 remained now, tired, hollow-eyed, clutching garlic, silver, and old promises. They listened as the old witch laid out her plan, her voice cracking like dry wood. "We must burn his true body," she said. "Only fire can unmake a Pricolici, but fire alone isn't enough. You need bone dust from the first victim, wolf's bane boiled in blood, and someone willing to spill their own." No one moved, until Soren, a young man who had lost his parents just days before, stepped forward. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll bleed, burn, dig, whatever it takes. Just tell me where." Baba Mura nodded slowly. "Then pray you're not already too late." That night, Soren, Baba Mura, and 2 others ventured into the woods. The trees bent unnaturally, forming tunnels of rot and silence. No birds, no wind, only the sound of their own breath. They reached the old graveyard, long abandoned, where Iancu had first been buried. The grave was still open, empty. Bones scattered around it, broken, blackened, gnawed. They followed drag marks through the trees, deeper than anyone dared go. There, in a clearing no one remembered being there before, they found the tree. Twisted and hollow, its bark pulsing like skin, and inside it, curled like a sleeping child, was Iancu's corpse, still fresh, as if he had died just hours ago. But his eyes were open, watching, smiling. Baba Mura began the ritual. She crushed the bone of Mihai, the first victim, into powder, mixed it with wolf's bane and Soren's blood. The mixture sizzled like acid. They poured it onto Iancu's corpse and set it aflame. The body writhed, shrieking, not with a voice, but with many voices, the screams of the dead echoing from within the fire. The air thickened. The trees trembled. Then the flames turned blue. And just as the corpse began to turn to ash, it vanished, as if it had never been there. Soren fell to his knees, panting. "What happened?" he gasped. "Did it work?" Baba Mura said nothing, because she knew the truth. "We didn't kill him," she whispered. "We only woke him up." When they returned to the village, they found the chapel burning. Inside, the other villagers lay scattered across the floor, untouched, unburned, but very much dead. Eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. Carved into the chapel's altar were the words, "I was never in the tree." Soren screamed. Baba Mura collapsed, and somewhere behind them, in the rising smoke, something laughed. Lupoaia was dead, its homes blackened, its chapel gutted, its people gone, except for Soren and Baba Mura, who sat by the ashes, hollowed out by grief and firelight. The Pricolici had not just taken lives, It had consumed the village itself, its past, its faith, its soul. Soren stared at the carved words burned into the altar. "I was never in the tree. We did everything you said," he whispered, voice shaking. "Everything." Baba Mura didn't answer. She looked older now, ancient, brittle, almost see-through. "Ianku's body was never meant to be destroyed," she murmured. "The Pricolici is not a man risen from death. It's a curse that chooses a vessel and feeds until there's nothing left. And now, Soren, it has chosen you." That night, Soren dreamt of the forest. Not the way it was, but the way it had become alive, hungry, pulsing with memory. Roots writhed like snakes. Trees whispered in dead languages. Faces of the villagers peered from the bark, eyes empty, mouths stitched shut. In the center of it all stood Ianku, naked, tall, covered in fur and shadow. His face was half human, half wolf, and yet strangely calm. "Soren," the thing said, "you brought me back. I tried to destroy you." "You tried to destroy a myth." Ianku stepped forward. His smile revealed teeth too long for any living thing. "I am no longer Ianku. I am what I always was meant to be. A memory made flesh. A story that..." Soren awoke in the center of the woods on his feet with no idea how he got there. And he wasn't alone. The returned villagers stood around him, those hollow-eyed things smiling, silent, no longer pretending to be human. Behind them stood Ianku. "Or what was left of him. You fed me well," the creature said, voice like cracking wood. "And now I will rest in you." Soren felt it before he saw it, something squirming beneath his skin. His vision swam. His breath grew shallow. His hands, once human, twitched unnaturally. The Pricolici wasn't here to kill him. It was here to pass itself on. Baba Mura had said it. A Pricolici couldn't be destroyed. But it could be transferred. That's what the ritual had done, not burned it, bound it to him. "I won't let you," Soren growled. Ianku's shadow stepped closer. "You already have." In a final act of desperate rage, Soren reached into his coat and pulled the silver blade Mura had given him before they entered the forest. "If it lives in me," he shouted, "then it dies with me." He stabbed the blade into his own chest. The world went white. When Soren opened his eyes again, he was on the forest floor, alone. The hollow villagers were gone. The trees stood still. The air, for the first time in weeks, was silent. He coughed, touched his chest. No wound, no blood. Only a faint scar shaped like a crescent moon. He returned to the village. Baba Mura was dead. Peacefully, it seemed. In her lap, a note scrawled in trembling hand. "If you lived, it is in you now. Keep it buried, or we all return." Years passed. Lupoaia was abandoned. Nature reclaimed it. But deep in the woods, sometimes under a red moon, a howl rises from the trees. Not of a beast. Not of a man. Something in between. Something that remembers every scream. Because the Pricolici doesn't die. It only waits. And now, it dreams through Soren.